Hey, it's Doug Atkinson here at Identiverse 2018. I'm with Chris Gregory, Director of Technology at Omada. Chris, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So this is an event that's been growing every year. Obviously, identity and access management, cybersecurity is a huge topic. How is Omada? Why are you here? How are you finding the show? What are you talking to folks at on the floor about?
Well, I think Omada's here because we have an 18-year background in identity and access governance. We truly have grown our own code base over those years to the needs of the industry, including GDPR and other regulatory compliance needs. And this is a great show because it's very focused. You go to larger shows and identity seems to be very diluted and watered down, and it's very great reach with customers as well as partners for us here to be able to all be in the same space. So it's a tremendous value and it's a great show.
Well, that's why we're here as well. We love the focus. Obviously, we're very focused on identity and access management, but we're also focused on some of the macro movements that are happening. One of, in particular, is GDPR. It just happened. Huge transformation. You guys are based in Europe. Tell us about, how you're finding GDPR, how people are handling it. Are they getting it right? Did they? Were they able to get through on
Well,
the whole?
we have an extensive background, as I mentioned, in our 18-year history. We have practices across Western Europe, specifically in Germany, where GDPR gets its roots with the identity sovereignty movement, and we've evolved into that. So we have helped several customers achieve GDPR compliance. And it's funny, at this show I've seen several North American customers say that we don't deal with any EU, so therefore we don't think GDPR affects us. Personally, I think that's a mistake because I think that something could accidentally get through. You could find yourself out of compliance. I'm really impressed that several large organizations are just embracing GDPR on a global scale and embracing the user's privacy and the user rights. And I think that's the right approach. And I do think GDPR is here to stay, and it's certainly something that has the ability to grow globally.
Well, I think it's definitely here to stay. I'm curious though, because it seems like a lot of people were in denial right up until it happened, and then they were kind of rushing around, literally shutting IP address access off. What, as we've moved into the summer now, what would a piece of advice be from you to folks who think they might have gotten it sorted out but aren't quite sure?
Well, I think you can never be too sure, and I did see a lot of organizations very late in bringing on their CPO, the Chief Privacy Officer, responsible for making sure that an organization is GDPR compliant. I would say it's never too late to reach out for an assessment, never too late to ensure that you are, even if you're past the date and you haven't been a target. And I think everyone, if you see the news, you can see who the offenders were right out of the gate, no surprises. And I just think that if you want to be ready for the next wave of investigations or potential opportunities that GDPR is going to enforce, you would want to be ready. So it's never too late to get an assessment and ensure you are GDPR compliant just because you're past the date. So.
Now, do you see it as a global movement? Do you think that GDPR, as it's currently constituted, will spread to North America particularly?
I do think it's going to spread just personally, and I've seen what other larger corporations have done, and they've just embraced it as a worldwide standard. I think there's two reasons they embrace it as a worldwide standard. The first is they don't want to have any accidental breaches and have the unchecked data, which is where governance is going to play and where Omada really helps out, is ensuring the right people have access to only the materials they need to do their job and nothing more. But I also think that if you embrace GDPR as a global standard, you've got a standard blanket of compliance, eliminating and mitigating those risks for the organization as a whole.
So with regard to Omada, where are you particularly finding traction these days? Is it, as we've moved through kind of the adoption curve, from large enterprises on down, where are you guys really focusing this year?
Well, natively inside of the identity and governance space, we have GDPR and ISO 27001 built in. Typically on our projects in our deployment schedule, it is a focus area that comes up, and customers want to get that base GDPR compliance checks, the SOD checks that go with that, as well as the ISO checks. So it's just built-in policies right into our application and how we provide that to our consumers.
And other than GDPR, I mean, where's Omada getting traction?
We see a lot of traction in the ISO standards, the HIPAA, the Sarbanes-Oxley. the overall compliance, the segregation and separation of duties seems to be a big one for customers as well.
And with shows like this, what are you seeing? With folks kind of walking on the floor. Where are they? Where are they in terms of why are they here? What are they asking about?
We've seen, I think, what would be a pretty healthy spectrum of customers. We've had customers who still, believe it or not, are managing with Visual Basic scripts and a non-automated provisioning system, to customers who have an antiquated provisioning system with no governance, to people who've had a failed deployment of another governance product and who are come by and talk to us about how we can help them. So we've seen the entire spectrum, and it's really been great attendance for us. Our ID Pro event was very well attended, and I just think it speaks volumes about the event, right? You see a wide spectrum of customers and their needs.
Well, it's really interesting. So, are there any particular verticals that you're? I mean, obviously the heavily regulated folks, but
Sure. Well, we work specifically, we've got a great manufacturing go-to-market solution, but I would also say that when you look at the identity and access governance needs that companies have, it's kind of not really a solution that fits inside of any one vertical. It has to span across them all, because your compliance needs change as you move between verticals, whether you're in healthcare, and then if you even take healthcare further from provider to pharmaceutical, right? And I just think that that is going to be the opportunity for IGA to really grow and expand as customers need, because every single customer may have a standard regulatory compliance, but they also have their own unique internal processes that need to be adhered to, or that their CISO has asked them to adhere to. And I think that it's flexible. So there's no two cookie cutter type deployments you do once you get out of the broad compliance offerings.
and is that where you find traction within an organization at the CISO level, or is it? I mean, who do you guys engage with typically when you're first kind of coming through the door?
We certainly relish having opportunities to discuss with CISO. Usually it's director level or higher. Sometimes we join in at the combined approach, and we'll join in with the technical architects, the thought leaders, and push it up. We do find that the director level has the ability to influence procurement. CISOs definitely want to know what's going on. They're the ones driving the business, and sometimes other members of the CX community as well.
And is there any piece of advice you would offer to them as they've been moving through this year and into next?
Well, I mean, the only advice I think it's safe to offer, and I think that everybody who's in our position would offer, is always double check, make sure you're compliant, and mitigate the risk the best you can. So IGA is a great technology. It's a great way to get a handle on what you have, prevent the accidental data breaches, and ensure that you sleep well at night.
And we all want to sleep well at night.
We hope to. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for coming over.
for
Appreciate the
having me.
time. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You bet.